This episode is about learning who you are, about following your intuition, and thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this episode. I've found that therapy helps me listen to the quiet voice of my intuition. Therapy helps me separate the signal inner voice from the noise inner voice. And I've found BetterHelp to be the most immediate and accessible therapy platform. BetterHelp is online therapy that eliminates the time-consuming, pain-in-the-neck search for a therapist. The BetterHelp sign-up process simply asks you questions, straightforward questions that you answer online. Within 24 to 48 hours in most cases, BetterHelp connects you to a licensed therapist appropriate to your needs. You can do your sessions through text, voice, or video. Change your therapist if you want. Use this link for 10% off your first month of therapy, and the link is in the description. Thank you, BetterHelp. This dehumidifier sounds funny, and I want to procrastinate, so I'm going to take it apart and fix it. But I should be writing this episode. It's just f***ing with me. I probably have the most sought-after job in the world. There are 30 million YouTube channels. And I make a good living at this. Life's been good to me so far.
Cheese. Nice.
I can't complain, but sometimes I still do.
It's fun taking pictures with that big camera, right? Don't take pictures of rocks. No.
Seems kind of fine. No one that I know of has ever been paid to make little movies like this, like the movies I make. Nope, did not fix it. It's a kind of miracle for one and all. Alone in my kingdom, grumpy, but happy deep within. That light sucks. 2700 Kelvin, 3000 Kelvin. 2700 Kelvin it is. The direct messages on my Patreon channel are sort of an advice column at times, and I very much enjoy it. I sort of wish that I was paid the same amount of money for this career just to answer the advice column, but then I wouldn't really have anything to talk from. I wouldn't have a position to talk from. I think the position that kind of gives me credibility to give advice to young people who are mostly trying to make a career in some kind of creative business, what gives me that is, well, my whole career has been this pursuit of, I think, of the sort of freedom that allows me to make things for a living and sell them on my own terms and sort of have this, my own kingdom. And I want to talk to the millions and millions of people who want to be filmmakers or YouTubers, or I don't even know what this is called. I called a friend yesterday to get advice on what to say in this video, and he's a filmmaker and he owns a company that he built from scratch, and he's a photographer and he's successful and he makes money and he has a good living and he has a wife and he has a daughter, and his name's Mike. And Mike said he's a problem solver. That's how he categorized himself. He's not a filmmaker. He's not an entrepreneur. He's a problem solver. You know, my tendency is to narrow it down as like, I'm a story maker, but I also make other things. And I think Mike's right about it being a kind of a problem solving business. And, you know, I say to people who are like, how do I get started? How do I get started in being a filmmaker? I say three things. I say, one, don't do it. The second thing I say is, Get out of your parents' house immediately. If you're living with your parents, your top priority is not to be a filmmaker. Your top priority is to get out of your parents' house and pay your own rent. You can have roommates or whatever, but live on your own with your own money. And the third thing I've been saying lately is if you're trying to figure it out, don't go to college. Go to trade school. Because trade school in 9 months or a year or whatever, at a fraction of the cost of college, you will have money. You will have a job. You have people who we call geniuses, and they discover their thing early. They discover their talent, their super focused interest. They discover it very early in life. And I have friends like in this category, Josh Safdie and Ben Safdie. I've known since Ben was 19 years old. And these guys were just focused on, they were going to be filmmakers no matter what. They went to Boston University for film school. They were going to be filmmakers no matter what. They're not in the realm of what I'm talking. They're not me. They're not Casey Neistat. They were always going to be filmmakers. And they grew up in Manhattan. You know, they grew up, there were fathers and mothers of kids they went to school with or knew that were like filmmakers. There was a connection with it. But, you know, people like my brother and myself, we had no connection to the outside world of people making things for a living, artists or whatever you want to call them. It's really hard to come up with the name for what all these, they say creator, but I find all the names pretentious. They're all cringy. But the point I'm making is that I just knew I wanted to make things. I went to school. I wanted to be a writer. I started reading, I think in high school, I started reading Hunter Thompson, and I was like, my God, this guy has his own farm in Aspen, Colorado, which is one of the wonderful places in America. And he makes a good living, and he has this wild, crazy life, the kind of life that I'm interested in living. You know, I was 17 when I read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and I read and read and read all of everything I could get my hands on that he wrote. I got a job, an internship as a writer, and I discovered that I just didn't have the focus. I didn't have like the genius or the talent or whatever it is to be solely a writer. It's an insanely difficult sitting at a desk job. That's essentially what it is. It's a sitting at a desk job, and it's really, really hard. I am a writer now, but I'm a writer to facilitate these little videos that I make. So I write on a typewriter, and I write. But that's not solely what I'm doing. This thing that ended up being whatever this is didn't exist when I set out, but I set out with full commitment. I moved to New York. I'm going to be a writer. And then it just slowly dissolved. It just slowly started like, maybe not. Maybe this isn't the right thing. I got a video camera, just weird Jack and the Beanstalk stuff. I wanted to take the VHS tapes from when we were children that my mom shot and then edit them. And you could do it with the iMac DV that had just come out. You needed a Sony video camera that you could plug into the VCR to digitize the tapes. And then you could import the tape from the Sony into the iMac DV. And then you could edit. That was 24 years ago. And to this very day, to this very second, I have not stopped. And in the beginning, it was a completely obsessive, like drug addict, can't get me away from it. I can't stop thinking about it, like a conscience. Like it was like a frantic obsession. A very, very important detail about my brother and myself, okay? Nobody else was doing this. There was no one else. There was one guy. Nobody else was shooting home videos and obsessively editing them every single day and putting out a video. And by putting out, I just mean exporting to tape. There was no uploading to internet. There was, but it was like, what would the equivalent be of it today? The equivalent of it today would be for you to make one of those like a Insta360, take an Insta360 camera and make videos that you could put on your headphones and like have an experience doing. I don't know how many people are doing that today. There's probably not that many. And it's like, I don't think it's a thing yet. Maybe I'm wrong, but the machines aren't quite fast enough to do it. Blah, blah, blah. You had to, Casey and I were working for Tom Sachs at the time, and Tom Sachs paid us to make videos. And Tom Sachs was connected to the media machine of New York City. He was like beloved by all of the hip media magazines. And it was magazines back in the day. That's what kind of broke you open back then, was the magazines. And there was Interview magazine, which was started by Andy Warhol. And every year, Interview magazine did what's called the Crystal Ball issue, okay? And it was the superstars of tomorrow. And Andy Warhol coined the word superstar. So Tom Sachs met with the editor of Interview magazine. I can't remember her name. And he was like, he played it so beautifully. He was like, you should put the Neistat brothers in. And they did. And we went to this photographer's studio, and the studio was in the West Village. It was in like the nicest neighborhood in Manhattan. And what was his name? Albert Watson. We were in the green room. We were in the waiting room waiting to get our picture taken. And in the waiting room was this guy named Jonathan Couillet. And he was the other guy who did this. And I believe I had heard of him, and I believe I had seen his movie at Angelica Film Center. His movie was called Tarnation. Extremely disturbing. Really, he had an extremely horrible life coming up. And somehow he had video cameras and he shot it. And then with his iMac, he edited this, put together this insanely beautiful, very difficult video to watch. Movie. Gus Van Sant saw it, and Gus Van Sant like championed this guy, Jonathan Couillet. We were the only ones that I knew of, Casey and Jonathan Couillet. And eventually I evolved into wanting to make, I don't know how it happened. I just evolved into making these like essay videos. Like this thing that we're watching now is like this kind of like this essay video where I don't know why I like essays. I think I like essays because of the extreme point of view. I love the point of view. Like this book, The Outlaw Book of American Essays, is just like samples of essays, and this is what my videos have evolved into. And because I have these devices, I can make essays that don't require people to read them in order for me to make a living. I can make videos out of these essays. I think that's what I've evolved into, and I think what my channel is about is shop class as soulcraft. When people ask me what is my channel about, I think that's what it is. So the point is, like, you've got 30 million competitors out there if you're just solely going to do your YouTube channel to make a living. And so I've been having a lot of trouble with this era of this channel. Like 2024 so far has been very difficult because the way I make these videos is the way that Norm Macdonald said that he wrote jokes, which is he has a subject matter that he's obsessed with, and he just thinks about it and ruminates on it and tries to figure out, get his handle on it. And then he comes up with jokes about it. And his jokes are sort of his understanding of the phenomenon. And then he moves on to the next thing. It's his processing of something he's thinking about. And my videos are very similar. So the video about screws that I made, I've been thinking about screws for 20 years, and I've been thinking about what do I know about screws that other people don't know about screws. And for the past 5 months, my personal life has been stormy, so stormy that I've only been able to really concentrate on that stuff. And my personal life, this is just too private. It's too private for me to make work out of. So I went to Texas. I drove to Texas and thinking that, okay, that would snap me out of it. That would snap me out of this only, I'd have something new to think about and make videos about besides this turmoil that I can't make the videos about because it's too private and it's too personal and involves other people that I can't drag into the public. And I love driving, and I love driving my truck, and I love, to a certain degree, less so now that I have children, I love solitude. And I drive to Texas. I do the repair station, and I'm like not appreciating my life. I'm not getting joy out of my life. And I'm thinking about making this video about, so you think, are you really a filmmaker? I brought along this book, which is the Werner Herzog memoir. I am so struggling with this. I am so struggling to connect all these ideas. And this reminded me, yes, you, Van Neistat, you are this. Yes. Yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is your thing. And Herzog, in his masterclass, he says that every single filmmaker should read this book, The Peregrine by J.A. Baker. This was written by an amateur who was I think he was some kind of bureaucrat. He worked in some kind of government office. I'm pretty sure it was something like that. And he just would go out. He loved observing peregrines. And Werner Herzog said, every filmmaker must read this. And the reason I think he said that is because of the focus of this man, the love, the intensity of the love of his observation, the quality of his recording, and the insane level of detail of his observation. This is a man for, I don't know, years, sitting in a field with binoculars and maybe a notebook and a pencil and a sandwich in England, watching birds. And the book is a masterpiece. It's very hard. It doesn't have like an arcing story, so it's kind of like strangely pornographic in that way, and that it's super crafted detail. And I say, if you are trying to diagnose yourself whether or not you are a filmmaker, 2 books you should read. Okay. So the filmmaker that I think that the world needs is the successor to Werner Herzog. And I think you should read this book to sort of diagnose yourself. Just read this book and say, okay, do I have what it takes to live the life that he has? Never mind your talent in filmmaking. Never mind how good you are at the camera. That stuff doesn't matter. Do you have the guts and the will to do these things? And the uncertainty and the no money, never money, starving, never, and a film and discovering filmmaking is what I'm going to do. And this guy, to me, he's the example of how to live if you have what I have, what we have. And so you read this book, I don't know, do you connect? Do you have the guts? I mean, I don't have this level of guts. I don't have this level of faith. And I am not this level of artist. But he's kind of a conscience. He's kind of, Werner did it. Look what he did. I mean, okay, so that's one book. All right. This is what I think we need. And I don't know that it's feature-length films. I don't know that it's probably not. That's probably not the medium we need. It's probably not 2 hours, sit in a movie theater, watch. It's probably not. Just like it's not opera anymore. Just like it's not the theater anymore. But who am I to say? I don't know. The other book you should read, if you're thinking, oh, I want to make those movies like Pulp Fiction. I want to make those movies like the Paul Thomas Anderson movies or the Wes Anderson movies. These masterpieces of the 90s. These independent masterpieces with big stars in them. Not like Avengers Hollywood movies, but like Boogie Nights Hollywood movies, right? You should read this book by David Mamet, Everywhere and Oink Oink, because that's what he made. David Mamet, if you don't know who he is an American treasure. He's a legend. For instance, that term wag the dog, he invented that term. That term always be closing.
A always be B, C closing. Always be closing. Always be closing.
That's him. Coffee is for closers. That whole closers thing.
Coffee's for closers only.
That's from Glengarry Glen Ross. That's Mamet. He wrote masterpieces. Glengarry Glen Ross, like I mentioned, he wrote the movie Ronin. What else did he write? Heist. I mean, you read this, you learn all the insane masterpiece. He was like a Hollywood like jewel. To me, he sort of represents the end of the Hollywood that we love, and then he's sort of been blacklisted from that world because of his political views, probably, but who knows why. So this book is about the beloved Hollywood and the disgusting mess that it's become today. And I think before you commit your life and say, oh, that's what I want to go into, you should have some knowledge as to what exactly you're going into, because it's not the romantic, I'm coming to Los Angeles with a dream, or I'm going to write a screenplay. It's a disgusting snake pit of vile scumbags trying to exert power over, and his record of it is insanely great and hilarious and insightful. Herzog is still making movies, and his foundation, he gave away to his foundation all of the copyrights to his library. Okay. And so, all right, this video here, what's been killing me is I could not figure out the ending. I couldn't figure out the surprise at the end. It was just And Herzog, at the beginning of this book, tells us that he ended the book mid-sentence when he was writing, and a hummingbird slammed into the window where he was writing. The end.